Joining us right now is former New York Lieutenant Governor Betsy McCaughey and Chuck Rocha, Democratic Strategist and President of Solidarity Strategies. Good to see you both. Thanks so much for joining us. Betsy, let me get congratulations to you. You're
Thank you.
One. Betsy, what do you make of Obama's language addressing Trump? It's interesting. He's taken a real steady stand on this.
It is, and it's probably a good thing that he's taking this tour because it removes him from the American stage, giving the president-elect a little more room. On the other hand, it probably would have been better if he had just played golf, because the fact is this election was a repudiation of President Obama's foreign policy, his Paris Climate Accord, his Iran deal, the ongoing slaughter in the Middle East. So for him to meet with foreign leaders now, you wonder what can possibly be accomplished.
Well, you know what he's saying, Chuck, is that he's basically talking about the president-elect and what he can tell other leaders in terms of what to expect. What do you think he's going to be saying to leaders abroad?
Well, the first thing I think he's going to be saying is, I've talked to Donald Trump, and he ain't as crazy as all of y'all think he is. He's ready to come in. He's trying to do good things, and that he's going to be your president, whether you like it or not, whether you voted for him or you didn't. I did not vote for Donald Trump, but guess what? Donald Trump is going to be my president, and much like the president, I'm going to give him a shot. And I think that he's not wanting to come in to destroy America. I think that he's got a vision. I think we can debate policy initiatives, and I want to hold him accountable on the things that I will disagree, but he's the president of the United States. He'll be sworn into office. He'll put his hand on the Bible, and whether I like him or I don't like him, he will be my president. I think more people need to wake up to that, and then let's hold all elected officials accountable.
Yeah, that's the tone that President Obama. That's the tone that President Obama is setting, though, isn't he, taking?
It is, and it goes back to how President Bush and the First Lady treated the President Obama and his wife during the transition. And frankly, over the last 8 years, I've said this over and over again, the Bushes set an example in terms of grace and class and courtesy to the Obamas. And he understands, President Obama understands the importance of a handover. And the campaign's over, he said that. Right. And he was as kind in word as he could be to President-elect Trump. But Chuck, to your point, what in the heck do you think Donald Trump can do? You're a Bernie Sanders supporter. You were as left. What could Donald Trump do as the president that would make you happy?
Well, it's very interesting that you say that, Dayton. It's a great question, because what I saw when I was working for a year for Bernie Sanders was crowds of people who came together who were frustrated that their voice wasn't being heard by their government, by their elected officials, and they kind of felt left out. Well, guess what? Donald Trump appealed to those same types of people, and the American people, for the most part, have seen themselves be left behind by an economic recovery that went on for good people, for rich people, but regular folks have been left behind. So there's a commonality of struggle there where people want to voice again in their government to stand up for all Americans.
And that's exactly why Donald Trump won the election, because he was able to bring in those middle America voters who had been forgotten by Washington.
Yeah, and Rachel, even with some pushback from the GOP and the establishment, let's talk about Paul Ryan for a second. Sure. He's expected to retain his title as House Speaker, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no other member of Congress that has the support or the gravitas of Paul Ryan.
Really?
There's no, first of all, there's no other replacement for him, and secondly, they like him.
Yeah. Well, the closed-door vote reportedly taking place today, securing Ryan for a second term. But on the other side of the aisle, Representative Keith Ellison formally announced his run for DNC chair. What do you all think about that in terms of...
This shows that the Democrats learned nothing from last week's rout. The fact is, Keith Ellison is extremely radical. He's known to have had dalliances intellectually with Louis Farrakhan early in his life. He's one of 2 Muslims in Congress. Nothing wrong with being a Muslim, but the fact is he is pulling the Democratic Party far left. And this meeting that's occurring with George Soros and Democratic leaders signals that these people want to pull the party as far left as possible, rather than reaching out to the mainstream voters who repudiated them.
But that raises the issue of, is Hillary Clinton's loss, is it a rejection, and Chuck can answer this better than I can, is it a rejection of the Clintons? Is it a rejection of her and all the cronies who surrounded them, who did sleazy things to keep her in power and give her the nomination? Or is it a rejection of the more left ideology of the last 8 years?
I think it's a rejection of globalism, of the way the Democrats turned patriotism into xenophobia. There was something wrong with you if you wanted to put America first, and most Americans find that repulsive.
What about that, Chuck? Do you think the election was more about a repudiation against the extreme left and the policies, as Dagan put it, or do you think it was just really Clinton?
I think that it's a combination of both. I joined the Democratic Party because I lost my job in a factory that moved to China, and I was tired of old, rich white men trying to tell working class folks how to act and how to live. Well, guess who had that message this year and the reason why he won? The Democratic Party needs to get back to the core, and we need to drain our swamps and ourselves of all of our political insiders who've been running the party for over 15, 20 years. We've lost 11 Senate seats, 60 congressional seats, and 14 governor's races in the last 9 years.
Wow.
We need to change everything and put a new face and a new vision forward for the American people and bring our voters back to us.
I really like you, Chuck.
That's why it's a repudiation of Barack Obama. I mean, he did say, my legacy is on the line.
Yeah.
And we know these policies don't work. We know that on the Fox Business Channel, that those policies didn't work economically.
Let's talk about George Soros for a minute. Billionaire investor, other wealthy Democratic donors are meeting in Washington, according to reports. They want to find ways to use their funds to oppose President-elect Trump and retool their approach. He's already done a lot, George Soros, hasn't he?
Yeah. Well, Chuck, and I'd like to ask you this question. I mean, there seems to be a double standard here where you have, the Democrats get very little scrutiny about their bigwig donors meeting in Washington, D.C. Republicans tend to get a lot of scrutiny for that. How do you see that as somebody coming from the left but sort of fed up with how things have been going?
I think it goes back to that core issue I was talking about. Democrats and lefties like me have been pushing for things like minimum wage, trying to make sure that Social Security be there for the long haul. But we have had big donors like that who've been very influential within our own party apparatus. And I think that's what made Bernie Sanders different. We raised $229 million from over 8 million different donors, $25 at a time, showing that regular people could have an influence in their society and in their Democratic Party. And I think that's probably going to be the new model with the internet.
George Soros, because he was behind voter fraud. I mean, he was behind a lot of bad stuff.
Actually, the whole basket of deplorables concept came from George Soros. He used that very same language to try to discredit candidates in Europe. And he uses his funds all around the world to push elections to the left. He funded many local prosecutors' races in the U.S. this cycle.
Is he an American citizen?
I assume he is, but I don't know. He used a lot of money to fund anti-law and order candidates for local prosecutors, people who would be soft on crime.
I know that he's European, but that's why I won't. But he's an American citizen?
I think he is, but notice he's talking in person. There's no more emails going through. I think they're nervous about these things getting out in public. They're having a meeting.
I'm sorry?
I don't think he could make large donations to American candidates
if he weren't. I'm sorry, Rich, what were you saying?
No, I was just saying that they're having a meeting versus doing this by email. I think they know that their emails are being watched or can be leaked.
And it's a big money approach to politics, which is exactly what voters repudiated, and that's what Democrats are going right back to after the election.
Doubling down.
It's true. Betsy McCaughey, Chuck Rocha, good to see you both. Thank you so much.